whenever we look at the past, whether it's through history or archaeology or whatever, there always has to be a logical, sensible reason for every event that occurs. But just sometimes you come across an event, and however hard you try, you can't find a normal, rational reason for it, which is why we call those events paranormal. I'm going to be looking at some of them, and my job is to look in as open-minded a way as I possibly can to see if I can find the truth behind them. I'm going to be working with a scientific journalist called Becky McCall, who's very, very bright, and she's also very sceptical, which is probably a good thing, because we're going to be looking at one of the most intriguing cases of group reincarnation on record. Could a West Country housewife really have been possessed by the victims of a medieval genocide? Becky, this is the story. It's March 1962 down in Bath, and Dr. Arthur Gurdon, who's an NHS psychiatrist, is working at Balebrook House Hospital. And his last client of the day is a woman called Mrs. Smith.
She's getting too jealous, don't know.
And she tells him that she is racked with nightmares. Nightmares, in fact, which she's had since childhood. And they're very vivid, with extraordinary detail in them. But they're not about 1960s Bath. They're about a completely different period in time and a completely different place. Eventually, he comes to the conclusion that she is, in fact, being haunted by a terrible previous life. Dr. Arthur Gurdon was a psychiatrist at Balebrook Hospital near Bath. He was well respected in his profession. He'd written lots of books and psychological studies. So what could have led him to believe that Mrs. Smith had had a past life and that she'd been part of an obscure medieval sect called the Cathars? Of all the people who've researched the Gurdon case, probably the most knowledgeable is Royce Stemmen. What specific things did she talk about that he identified as Cathar?
She gave him names and details, historical information that wouldn't have been available to her at all. Details of a life in 13th century France, which he recognised as being the Cathar period.
So Gurdon was convinced that Mrs. Smith's vivid dreams, the stuff that had tormented her since the age of 13, were proof of a past life. In one dream, Mrs. Smith fell in love with a priest called Roger de Grisol. And that she also dreamt of someone or something called Fabrissa, and had visions of a menacing figure, Pierre de Mazereau.
But Mrs. Smith wasn't alone. Other people began consulting Gurdon and telling very similar stories.
Other people? My alarm bells have started ringing, Roy. Was this bloke really a psychiatrist or just a nutter who attracted other nutters to him?
No, he was a respected psychiatrist working in the hospitals in Bath.
Can we go and see any of the Bath Cathars? Can we learn more about them from their own testimony?
Sadly, no. A couple of reasons for that. This all happened in the 1960s. Gurdon said he was, because of patient confidentiality, he didn't name them. So Mrs. Smith and the other people he talked about are not their real names.
So we can't talk to them, we don't know their addresses, we don't even know their real names.
And the other problem is Gurdon died in 1991. There's a good chance they may all be dead by now.
The Cathars were a group of Christian heretics living in the Languedoc region of southwest France over 700 years ago. Why was Gurdam so convinced that this group had been reincarnated in 1960s Bath?
I want to find out more about this religious sect, so I'm going to talk to a medieval historian. So what did these people believe?
They believed in God, and that God had created their souls, but they also believed that the material world that we can see around us was created by the devil as a trap, and he tricked their souls out of heaven and imprisoned them here. And of course, that meant that their goal in life and in death was to return to God, to return to heaven.
But sometimes they came back here, and was that because they failed?
Yes, they reincarnated, and in a sense it was a failure. But there was no limit on the number of times that they could reincarnate and their soul transmigrate to another human.
So why did the Catholic Church feel so threatened by the Cathars?
Oh, well, they were threatened because it was the default religion in Languedoc. The Cathars had no churches. They mocked the Catholics for worshipping the cross on which Christ was punished, and for that they were called heretics. The Pope called for there to be a crusade of all right-thinking people, a great massing of soldiers of Christ to descend on Languedoc, and he sent in the Inquisition, which was founded for the purpose of destroying the Cathar Church, with a systematic, bureaucratic persecution based on interrogation and cross-referencing of records.
So effectively the Cathars were pursued?
Absolutely, until ultimately they ended up in their last, greatest stronghold, on a rocky outcrop known as Montségur, the Safe Mountain. It turned out that it wasn't. In 1244, at Easter time, it ended in massacre.
It really sticks in your mind, this story about a group of heretics who were massacred by the Inquisition down in the south of France. But what about this psychiatrist? Was he genuine, or was he just some kind of hippie who only believed what he wanted to believe? There's a man called David Fontana who actually knew him. That's who I'm going to see next. When did you meet Dr. Gurdam?
I met him in the early 1980s. I was very, very impressed right from the start. He, without any doubt at all, was a scientist.
You don't think he could have been fooling himself? He wasn't the kind of man who would have desperately wanted to believe something and then stacked up the evidence to support that belief?
I don't think so, Tony. No, I don't think so, because he found the evidence first.
I just saw the GP.
And he recognised quite early on that he had to check up on this stuff. If it was genuine material, the answer lay in France. So he had to go and look at some of the documentation that was available there and meet people who were experts on the Cathars. And when he found out that some of the materials, which was very obscure, actually checked out, then his interest was very definitely aroused. And gradually, as you build up a case like that with incident after incident that proves to be correct, this leads to conviction.
Roy, specifically, what was it that convinced Gurdam that Mrs. Smith and the rest of the group had been Cathars in a previous life?
Gurdam was impressed with the amount of detail. Firstly, the names that they provided him with, particularly Mrs. Smith, who talked about Pierre de Mazerolles, Roger, and other people that Gurdam, from his own research into Cathars, recognized. They then began to give descriptions of everyday life in detail that is totally inexplicable. For example, Mrs. Smith talked about a coin that she used, and this actually is her drawing of that coin. Nobody knew what that was at the time she drew it, but later it was confirmed by researchers working on the Cathar religion that that was a coin that they used, and there is great similarity between it. Amazingly, she talked about the colour of the robes that the Cathar priests wore, and she described it as blue. Now that seemed to be totally wrong. Everybody thought that the robes were black, but later it was shown that they did wear blue robes. It's not the sort of information you would expect anyone to have as common knowledge. So the evidence, I think, is remarkably strong.
Do you think Mrs. Smith was a fraud?
No, I don't, and we've got to remember that she wasn't the only one presenting it, because suddenly in Bath, other people began popping up with very similar memories.
So how did all this come together in the 1960s?
The only explanation that is offered is that this is a case of group reincarnation, that these people, all of whom were Cathars, have chosen for whatever reason to be reborn here in 20th century England in Bath.
You know, I'm just not really convinced by that coin.
Why not?
Well, you know, 4 marks on a circle.
Look, 19 people in this city in the 1960s, all having some kind of vision about a same moment in history that they couldn't have known about any other way. Is that worth investigating? I think so. In late 1960s Bath, psychiatrist Arthur Gurdon became convinced that a group of his patients had all lived previous lives as a group of religious heretics in 13th century France called Cathars.
Hi there.
Well, this is all a bit extraordinary, isn't it?
Extraordinary, maybe, but I don't think we have much of an investigation.
Oh, come on. We know the Cathars existed. We know there were all these women in Bath who believed that they had been Cathars. We certainly know that the psychiatrist is a pretty credible character, and there's all this business about regression and past lives.
But how do we investigate that? We could look at it scientifically, and we could look at it through hypnosis.
When you say we could look at it through hypnosis, I think you mean I could look at it through hypnosis.
More to the point.
You never know. I might find I'm a Cathar myself. I'm not like Mrs. Smith. I haven't had any great visions or the kind of déjà vu that makes you think you must have had a past life. So I'm going to see a woman called Nikki Cassar, because if I have had a past life, then she can help me get in touch with it using hypnosis and past life regression.
Tony, today what we're going to be doing is in a little while we're going to go next door. Now, you said to me you've never had hypnosis before.
No.
Okay. Now, there are 2 parts of the mind. There's the conscious part of the mind and the subconscious. And the conscious part of the mind only has a temporary memory. It's very small. It's analytical, logical. It's daily part of your mind. The subconscious part of your mind is infinite. It's where you have your permanent memory. And it's where everything that ever happened to you in this life or previous lives is stored.
You know what worries me? Well, not worries me, but I've got a slight apprehension. I'm very analytical.
Yeah.
And I just feel that I might be stuck outside the experience.
I think that I have the tools to help you with that. I think you'll be okay. So get ready now. 5, going back, 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 all the way back, getting younger and younger, smaller and smaller. 4, going back, back, back through your birth, getting even smaller, shrinking down. 3, back into the womb, going all the way back. Back, back, back to the time before conception. 2, you're nearly there now. Another time, another place, a former life. 1, be there and experience it as if it were happening all over again. And I want you to give me your first impression. Is it daytime or nighttime?
Daytime.
Indoors or outdoors?
Outdoors.
Alone or with others?
I can see somebody, but I don't know who they are.
Okay, so daytime outside. And just get a sense of your surroundings, if you will.
It's very hot, it's shimmering. And there's a tree 20 feet away, and there's a very red bird and a very bluey green bird next to it.
And now, as I tap you on the forehead, we're going to learn more about the country or geographical location you're currently experiencing. The first letter or the full name?
Aye.
Aye.
It's India. It's
Beautiful, beautiful. And now we're going to learn the year within which you're currently experiencing. The number of the year, the first number or the whole number?
1847.
1847. Beautiful. And just give me your first impression. How old are you?
26.
Okay. Are you standing or sitting or lying?
I'm standing.
You're standing.
I'm holding my little stick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's called. I have a uniform.
Mm-hmm. You've got a uniform.
It's khaki. Has some sort of bulge around the sides of the trousers.
Mm.
And I'm a bit of a bastard.
Okay. And now I'm going to gently tap you on the forehead, and your name or the letters of your name are going to come into your awareness. And your name or the first letter of your name is?
Marshall.
Marshall. Is that your first name or your second name?
It's my first name.
Your first name, Marshall. Do you have any recollection of a second name?
It's Cranley.
Okay. So there you are in this location. What's around you?
There's a lot of people seated on the floor in front of me, Indians.
Mm-hmm.
And some sort of senior figure like a sultan or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very, very dusty. I'm quite thirsty, but I'm going to ignore that.
Gurdon was gathering evidence to prove his theory of group reincarnation, but he died in 1991 before he completed his work. There are hundreds of regressionists out there. I'm going to get in touch with some of them to see if I can find any new evidence of group reincarnation, or another group who believe they were Cathars in a previous life.
Hello, hi. It's Becky McCall here. I think we spoke earlier.
Feeling good, feeling wide awake, and eyes open. Welcome back. Have a good stretch.
Hello.
Hello. And there you are. So, right from the very beginning, you seem to have a very clear recall. Did it feel real?
And some of the time it felt incredibly phony, and some of the time it felt very real.
Okay.
When I was standing on that bloody, I don't know whether it was a parade ground or whatever, with all these people's bottoms sticking in my direction and their heads up towards this this Sultan or Raja or whatever he was, then the sheer agonising tedium of that didn't feel to me like something that I would particularly want to make up. Having been through this whole experience, I think I can understand in a way that probably you wouldn't be able to if you hadn't undergone that whole procedure, why the people in Bath thought that they'd been Cathars just because it felt as though they'd been through all those terrible things. It's so vivid. No wonder it seems absolutely authentic. Hiya.
Hi.
The headlines.
Oh, hi.
She did regress me. It was colonial India, early to mid-19th century.
Okay.
I'm some kind of junior officer in the Raj.
What sort of state were you in at the time? How did you feel?
It felt very real. I could smell things, I could taste things.
Yeah.
There was a lot of rawness about the experience. There was one bit, and it was really dusty. And I felt incredibly thirsty, but unlike me, and there was some water right next to me, unlike me who would reach for the water like we all do nowadays,
Sure,
I knew I had to soldier on.
Yeah.
But I was actually gagging, my throat was gagging.
I mean, I think what we have to do is we have to try and put this to the test somehow. I think that's the only way we're going to move further with this. So if we check this against the history book, perhaps we can find some records. But if we don't, if we tell you this didn't exist, this is all a creation, how will you feel? I mean, you want to believe this. You really want to believe this, I think.
It's hard for me not to believe it right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
You show me the evidence that he didn't exist or that experience didn't exist, then I will cope with it. But at the moment, yeah, it's real stuff. It's real stuff.
Military papers of 1847 and birth, deaths and marriage registers will quickly tell me if Tony's Marshall Cranley was ever recorded in the archives.
The information that Mrs. Smith gave Gurdon convinced him that the Bath women had been Cathars in a previous life. And there was a way he could verify the names she recalled in her dreams. Places and names like Fabrissa and Pierre de Mazerolles. Because when the Pope ordered the French Inquisition to root out and destroy the Cathar heretics, they recorded the name of every person they met and every conversation they had with them. And those records are in Toulouse. So I'm going to go there to see if he was right. Hi, Greg. Thanks for picking me up.
Welcome to Toulouse.
How far are we going?
Into the centre of the city.
Did you use the Inquisitional Register much when you were writing your book?
Yes, I did, enormously. It's the primary resource.
So it would have made sense that Gurdon would have come here to research what Mrs. Smith was saying?
Absolutely. There was nowhere else he could go.
Initially, I suppose, it would have been fairly easy to establish, yes, she was talking about something vaguely Cathar. But then, when she started talking about specific names and this person or place called Fabrissa, she's not sure what it is,
Yes.
and this mysterious man, Pierre de Mazerolles, well, that's pretty tangible stuff.
It is, absolutely. And the only way of verifying that is to go to the records and look for those names.
You say the only way. Can you think of any source that Mrs. Smith could have gone to get that kind of information other than here?
Well, that's why the story is so impressive, because I can't.
It's easy to forget, isn't it, that 50 years ago there was really very little information about this kind of stuff around.
Absolutely, whereas now you can find it all on the internet.
Sure. How long have we got here?
We've got 30 minutes, Tony.
30 minutes in and out?
Yep.
Blimey, better get a move on.
Merci beaucoup. Isn't that marvellous? And this is manuscript 609.
Pour des raisons de conservation, on ne
For
peut pas
conservators' reasons, we can't open this one.
à l'ouvrir et filmer. Donc vous avez le CD qui correspond. Voilà.
But we've got the details of that one on the CD. So the other book, which has been rebound,
Yeah.
we can actually see the text.
Who would have written these pages originally?
The scribes, the humble scribe, was scratching it out by hand.
When a policeman's writing up his notes, they tend to be pretty bald and factual,
Yes,
don't they?
yes.
Is it the same here?
Well, that was the way in which they interrogated. It was one after another the same questions to every witness. Did you see the heretics? Did you adore the heretics? But also, in order to track down as many Cathar believers as they could, they took extensive testimony about their daily lives.
What kinds of things?
Well, almost mundane, Tony. Some of them you can learn how so-and-so borrowed my cooking pot, and I've not yet seen it back. Oh, extraordinary detail, in fact.
Which is why Gurdon was able to decide so conclusively that the things that the women had been saying were true. It says here, February the 4th, 1965, Mrs. Smith asks Gurdon if he's ever heard the name Fabrissa. He says he hasn't. Was it a person or a place. And there she is, Fabrice, definitely a person, in a document from the French Inquisition. I know I shouldn't be surprised because Gurdam said it would be here, but it's still rather weird. And what about this shadowy figure, Pierre de Mazerolles? Yep. There he is. It is weird, isn't it? So much of what Mrs. Smith said is borne out by these manuscripts.
Yes, it is. A 700-year-old inquisitorial record, and it includes proper names. Names that apparently she dreamt.
What are the odds of a woman in Bath making up the name Pierre de Mazerolles? About 1 trillion to 1?
No, absolutely. There's no chance, is there?
It is looking good, isn't it?
As long as, in the first place, we trust Gurdam.
But at the moment, we haven't shot any holes in the story.
No, not really.
No, it's stacking up. Oh, thanks, Becca.
Hi. How'd it go?
Not bad, not bad. Looks like it all stacks up.
Good.
How about you?
Well, not quite so good. I looked into Marshall Cranley, his
Yeah.
character. This all amounts to nothing, really.
Just the product of an overactive imagination.
So it would seem. There is something else.
Some good news.
Yeah. Open the laptop.
Yeah.
You know those 150 emails I sent out to different regression groups?
I certainly do.
Well, one group's got back to me. Apparently, they all think they were Cathars in a former life.
These ones here?
And they all live in Dublin. They're alive and well.
In Dublin?
Yeah.
Will they talk to us?
Well, yeah, they say they will.
Well, I hope she's a bit more lively than she is now. During a meeting with the psychiatrist Arthur Gurdam in 1972, one of the Bath group known as Miss Mills recalled the last moments of her life as a 13th century Cathar. In a horrific scene, she was burnt at the stake near a mountain called Montsegur. And what's more, Gurdam believed that an unusual birthmark above her hip was evidence of this brutal death. He wrote in his book, "Examination revealed a belt of strange protuberances arising from the skin. They looked like burns." What I find so frustrating is that I can't speak to Gurdam or Miss Mills or any of them. There are some people in Ireland, though, who are having an almost identical experience. They actually believe that they were Cathars in a previous life. But unlike Gurdam's group, I can actually talk to this lot. How long have you known each other?
Many years.
Yes, we actually met when we were 21. We both worked in the Kilkenny design workshops in Ireland.
And we instantly became friends. It was almost like we'd known each other forever.
Which in fact you probably had.
we had.
What was your experience that made you think that you had been a Cathar in a previous life?
When I first heard the word Cathar, it just had some kind of, just a resonance. And then I did a little bit of investigation, like who were the Cathars?
And everybody talked about Montsegur. So we just thought, well, there's a trip.
Let's do a road trip there. Let's go and investigate this place. And
not
expecting
really.
anything really, but just to satisfy curiosity and a real draw to the place. When we arrived at Montsegur and just started the climb, and we were at the top of the hill, probably been there for some time, took some photographs, walked around, enjoyed the scenery, and then we were about to, just leave, and I just had felt this draw to sort of, without saying anything to Kathy, I just kind of went in the opposite direction. I was just sort of stumbling over rocks, and because there was no path anymore, and I couldn't stop myself. I just had this very, very strange experience. Maybe, I don't know, you could call it deja vu or whatever, but it was a little bit stronger than that. It wasn't just the place that felt sort of familiar. I actually went in, I actually changed. I actually felt that I was in a different body. And it was a man, like my feet felt different. I just wasn't me standing there.
Do you know who she was?
Who she was?
Or he was, this guy?
It was actually he. So in that lifetime, I was actually a man.
How would you feel about going back?
It'd be amazing. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes,
It'd be interesting
certainly
to go
would
back.
be.
Yeah.
Would you come back with us?
Absolutely.
What if Gurdon was wrong and the Bath group weren't reincarnated Cathars at all? Could anything else have been going on between Mrs. Smith and Gurdon? I've looked at the history. Now it's time to investigate the psychology.
Peter Naish is an expert in legal cases involving false memories. I wonder what he thinks.
So in the 1960s, there was this bunch of women who believed they had past lives. They believed they were Cathars.
Yes.
Could they have been fed a false memory?
Absolutely. It's remarkably easy, even without actively doing something to someone, like hypnosis, for example. You can, for about 25% of the population, get them to buy into something which never happened. An experiment was done. They took people and said, we believe that when you were little, you had a little surgical procedure done on you. Could you tell us about that? And they'd say, no, I don't remember anything like that. Oh, well, we thought it had happened. When you come back next week, you can tell us what you can remember. And 25% of these people came back and they told elaborate stories about how they could remember going up the steps into the surgery and what the surgeon looked like.
So these women in the 60s possibly created a false memory.
Yes, that's entirely possible. I mean, we're not all authors. We wouldn't be able to write a bestseller, but we can all invent stories. And we could invent a story about Cathars if we liked. Of course, the problem is we wouldn't believe it, and they obviously were believing it. This is the crux of the matter.
So these women lived in suburban Bath. Where do you think they got all this information from?
That is an interesting one, of course. It just has to be that he's feeding them information. You see, it's not a cold interview like in a police interview where they're very careful not to feed information to a witness in case it gives them preconceived ideas. In the therapeutic relationship, it's very to and fro. You tell me a little, I reflect it to you, and you expand a bit. How easy, if they say something that he interprets as being Cathar related, for him to say, really? That's what you've been thinking? So, would it have a bit of this in it? And they think about it and say, yes, I think it does. So it snowballs, and between the two of them, they invent this entirely fictitious scenario, a folie à deux.
You know, I think it was Gurdon who was leading Mrs. Smith and the others on.
Why do you say that?
Well, you know, I think they came to him with pieces of the jigsaw and he was the one who put it all together. He related it to the Cathars.
Why? What evidence have you got?
OK, well, look at this. April the 15th, 1965. Mrs. Smith comes to Gurdon with her recurring nightmare. She says, a few months ago I was reading a newspaper and thinking of nothing in particular, when all of a sudden I knew the identity of the man in my dream. This man was a strange character. He'd murdered someone and said he was glad. And then he tried to kiss me. All Gurdon writes in his notes is this description corresponds to Pierre de Mazerolles.
And it was Gurdon who said that, not Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
That's pretty unprofessional, isn't it? You're saying that Gurdon was just hearing what he wanted to hear.
I think Gurdon was actually transferring his obsession with the Cathars onto the women.
I think Becky's right. This story hangs on the relationship between Gurdon and Mrs. Smith. Was Gurdon a fraud? Was he just making the whole thing up? Or was Mrs. Smith the fraud? And he was just subconsciously buying into what she was saying. I mean, there's a passage in his book that really rings alarm bells. It says, January the 12th, 1964, the story takes a big leap forward. Mrs. Smith identified me as Roger in her past life. She said, we were a poor family, you were not of our class, but I fell in love with you. Mrs. Smith goes to her psychologist, who is Gurdon, and tells him that in a former life he was a Cathar called Roger de Grisol, and that in that previous life she had met him, had kissed him, had fallen in love with him, had slept with him, and he'd become the love of her life. Well, surely any psychologist who heard that would think, hang on a minute, this could just be the fact that she fancies me in this life and is projecting it into another life.
We have to remember that Gurdon would have encountered numerous patients who probably took a fancy to him, and I think he would, as a professional, be used to that, and he'd have kept his distance. The other thing is that she didn't tell him all of that at the first meeting. It was 2 years after she first consulted him that she told him that they had been lovers.
But Roy, in what you're telling me, I can hear another explanation, which is that gradually her story lured Gurdon in, and as he became more attracted to this rather sexy idea that he was Roger in a previous life, he just let go of his objectivity and started to believe it.
I'm not so sure about that. She was, after all, only one of quite a number of women that began to come forward with similar stories. There's no evidence that he treated her any differently to anyone else.
If Mrs. Smith and Miss Mills and all the others were feeding Gurdon's obsession with the Cathars, they were obviously having to put in more and more research to pull it off. As time went by, the stories became more elaborate and quite horrific.
So why would someone make all this up?
And what they were saying was so incredibly intense, wasn't it? Mrs. Smith said, I don't think I've dreamt about dying before, but the pain was maddening. The pain of those wicked flames. I didn't know when you were burnt to death you'd bleed. I thought the blood would all dry up in the terrible heat, but I was bleeding heavily. The blood was dripping and hissing in the flames. I wished I had enough blood to put the flames out. It's X-rated stuff, isn't it? A Massacre of Montségur.
So they were all drawn to this place at some point. Gurdon, each of the women, this homeland of the Cathars.
I know what the movie is. It's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, isn't it? They all have these visions separately, and then they're all hypnotised into going to this mysterious hill. It's time to visit the place where the Cathars met their violent and bloody end. We're deep in the heart of the Languedoc region of southern France, heading for the mountain fortress of Montségur, which certainly seemed to have had a powerful emotional draw on the Bath Cathars in the 1960s. And nearly 50 years later, it's affecting Kathy and Joni in a similar way. What does Montségur mean?
Quite literally, it means the safe mountain, the idea of the last stronghold.
But it's come to mean more than that, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. The first I ever heard of it, this is long before I took a personal interest in the history of the region. I was told it was a psychic scar on the landscape. And many people who go there, they feel that. They feel the weight of the calamities, the historic calamities that have taken place there.
Greg, what do you reckon it is that draws people here all these hundreds of years later?
Yes, hundreds of years, 750 years, more now. It's the knowledge that something appalling, something catastrophic happened here. And alongside that, the fact that the genocide of the Cathars is a story that reaches almost a formal conclusion. Its climax on the summit of this extraordinary mountain with the massacre of the 200-odd believers.
In 1244, Montsegur, high in the Languedoc Mountains, became the site of the Cathars' last stand against the armies of the Pope. A siege led by the Inquisition had brought the Cathars to their knees. How did it all end?
It ended with death. There was a catapult in range of the walls, raining stones down through the roofs of their fragile houses, and eventually they were persuaded to surrender. And a procession of Cathar prisoners descended the mountainside singing. And as the priests below heard their song, they struck up their own psalms in competition. They were led into the palisade of the stakes that had been driven into the ground and the faggots soaked in pitch that had been prepared to burn them.
Why were they burnt?
This is possibly the most evil part of the whole story. They were burnt because they could not therefore resurrect at the Last Judgment.
So they were not only dead as mortals, they'd lost their immortal life.
They were punished for all eternity.
Oh my God, that's pretty steep. This is exactly the spot I was standing in when I had that strange or unusual experience. I felt guilt, I felt cowardice, sadness, because I had made a decision that I'd left like the group of people, like the family, apart from like my own sort of intimate, immediate family, but the family of people that I'd been with, who were confronting this awful death. And I'd made a decision to somehow break away from that and not end up in like burning to death, but I actually, from here, jumped to my death. There's a certain beauty and a certain loneliness about this place for me, but it's not something that repels me. It actually kind of, I just want to stay in it. I don't know, it's just something that really touched my soul, I suppose.
It's funny how Joni's experience has turned this investigation of characters in an old book into a human story and brought the obscure long-dead Cathars back to life. But is there anything to the story of reincarnating Cathars, returning as a group to 1960s Bath and modern-day Ireland? Gurdon might have been driving the whole thing. We know he suggested the name Pierre de Mazerolles as being the character in Mrs. Smith's dreams. But that doesn't explain how Mrs. Smith came up with names like Fabrissa that were confirmed in the Inquisition archives.
So do you think there's anything in this at all?
Do you know what I really think? I think that Gurdon was a really obsessive man who found a couple of women who either consciously or subconsciously fed into his obsession.
So they were feeding off each other?
Yeah, I do think that.
I struggle, you know, to find anything real in it.
Oh no, it was real. It really was real. When I did that regression, it smelt real, it tasted real, the emotions were real. It was really real.
You know, you're crumbling, Tony. I think you believe in past lives.
Thank you.